When 89 missed calls flash across your screen in under 60 minutes, you don't think about emergency rooms or tragic accidents. When you've been no contact for 6 years, you think about survival. 6 years. That's how long I'd spent building a life out of peace, quiet, and complete separation from the people who raised me. No holiday texts, no awkward birthday cards, no updates. I had finally buried the past, and I was doing just fine. But at 2:14 a.m. on a rainy Tuesday, my phone lit up like a siren. One call, then 3, then 12. By the time the screen finally went dark, 89 notifications were stacked on top of each other, all from a number I had blocked years ago. They hadn't called to apologize. They hadn't called out of love. They called because a secret I left behind 6 years ago had finally caught up to them. My name is Nora. I'm 31 years old, and for the last 6 years, I've lived in a quiet coastal town 300 miles away from the house where I grew up. 6 years ago, I packed everything I owned into the trunk of a battered sedan and left my family in the rearview mirror. No tearful goodbyes. No forwarding address. Just a clean, deliberate break from a toxic household where my brother was the golden child who could do no wrong, and I was the scapegoat blamed for every family failure. For 6 years, I built a life out of peace. I earned my own degree, paid off my own debts, and learned what it felt like to go to sleep without a knot of anxiety in my chest. I had finally buried the past, and I was doing just fine. Then came Tuesday night. At 2:14 a.m., a sudden thunderstorm was rattling my bedroom window, but it wasn't the thunder that woke me. It was the frantic, persistent buzz of my phone against the nightstand. I reached out in the dark, expecting a storm warning. Instead, my heart dropped into my stomach. It was a contact name I hadn't seen in over 2,000 days. One call missed, then another immediately after. Before I could even process the shock, the notifications started piling up like a runaway train. My mother, my brother, and an unfamiliar local area code taking turns dialing. 12, 30, 55. By the time the screen finally went dark, 89 missed calls were stacked on my display. My hands shook as I stared at the glowing glass. People don't call 89 times in 60 minutes out of love or sudden regret. Something catastrophic had happened, and deep down, I knew that whatever fire was burning back home, they were expecting me to put it out. I sat frozen on the edge of my bed, the room illuminated only by the cold blue glare of my phone. 89 missed calls. My fingers hovered over the screen, trembling. Part of me wanted to power the phone off, throw it in a drawer, and go back to sleep. But curiosity is a heavy thing, and the silence in my room suddenly felt razor sharp. I tapped the voicemail icon. The first message was from my mother. There were no tears, no tremble of maternal relief, no frantic checks on my safety. Her voice was sharp and breathless with an aggressive edge I remembered all too well.
Nora, pick up the damn phone.
I know you can hear this. You need to answer right now. The bank is sending people to the house, and your brother's lawyer is on the line. We don't have time for your childish, silent treatment. Call me back immediately. I pressed play on the second voicemail, this one for my brother, Julian. His tone was even worse, pure panic mixed with furious arrogance. Nora, listen to me. Whatever games you're playing, stop. The title company red-flagged the sale. They're saying your name is still attached to the original estate trust, and the auditors are stepping in by morning. If you don't sign the clearance papers by 9 a.m., everything falls apart. You owe us this. I sat back against the headboard, my pulse racing. They weren't calling out of grief or a sudden realization of how much they missed me. They were calling because their money was on the line. Then a text notification popped up from the unknown number. It was a formal message from an independent estate attorney. Ms. Nora, your presence is urgently requested regarding an active audit on the Whitaker Family Trust. Please contact our office before probate assets are frozen. The mystery was deepening, and the past I thought I'd escaped was banging right on my front door. Sitting in the dark, the word trust echoed in my mind, unlocking memories I'd spent 6 years trying to bury. I remembered exactly why I fled when I was 25. It started when collection agencies began calling my phone for loans I'd never taken out. I soon discovered that my mother and Julian had used my identity, social security number, and credit to secure massive line of credit loans to bail Julian out of a failed business venture. When the debts piled up, they expected me to absorb the damage, arguing that family makes sacrifices for the golden child. Instead of fighting an endless, soul-crushing battle against my own blood, I drained my savings to settle what I could, signed off on my claims to the family home, cut all ties, and vanished. I wanted peace more than I wanted revenge. Or so I thought. What my mother and Julian had forgotten in their rush to push me out 6 years ago was a small, crucial detail about my grandfather. Papa had always seen through my family's greed. Before he passed, he had set up an ancestral trust for the family property, naming me as a co-beneficiary alongside my mother. When I left at 25, my family had forced me to sign a hasty, homemade quitclaim deed to relinquish the house. But what they didn't realize was that Papa's trust had a built-in legal safeguard. No deed or property transfer could ever be modified or sold without a formal, notarized audit signed by both surviving heirs in the presence of the trust's appointed executor. By rushing to sign me away, they had unknowingly set a legal time bomb. Now, 6 years later, that bomb had finally detonated. By 8 a.m., the sun was shining, but the tension in my living room was suffocating. I took a deep breath, placed my phone on the kitchen counter, and dialed my mother's number on speaker mode. It rang once before she snatched it up. "Nora?" Her voice shrieked through the speaker. "Where the hell have you been? Do you have any idea what you're doing to this family? You need to sign the emergency waiver right now. Julian's buyer is threatening to pull out." "Hello to you too, Mom," I said, my voice deadpan and surprisingly steady. "I see 6 years hasn't changed your manners." Julian's frantic voice cut in over hers. "Cut this self-righteous act, Nora. We're losing a $2 million cash deal on the house because of your little legal snag." The title company flagged Papa's old trust. "They're saying your 6-year-old quitclaim deed is legally invalid because you didn't sign it in front of the trust's official executor." I leaned against the counter, a quiet wave of satisfaction washing over me. "So, let me get this straight. You tried to sell Papa's house behind my back, using a forged or improper document, and now you're caught." "We didn't forge anything," my mother snapped. "You walked away. You abandoned us. That house belongs to Julian now. All you have to do is go to the notary today and sign off on your share so the deal can close." "My share?" I asked, narrowing my eyes. "Mom, according to Papa's trust, my share isn't just a signature. It's 50% of the entire property value." The silence on the other end of the line was absolute. 3 days later, I walked into the glass-walled conference room of an independent law firm in downtown Sacramento. I was no longer the frightened 25-year-old girl who had run away in the middle of the night. I wore a sharp charcoal blazer, carried a leather briefcase, and was accompanied by David, my own estate attorney. My mother and Julian were already seated across the long mahogany table. When they looked up, their eyes widened. They had expected an exhausted, guilty woman desperate to keep the peace. Instead, they met the cold, unyielding gaze of a stranger. "Nora," my mother began, her voice faltering slightly as she took in my appearance. "There's no need for all these lawyers. We're family." "Save it, Mom," I interrupted, taking my seat. "David, please present the audit." David unclipped his folder and laid out a series of legal documents with clinical precision. "Over the past 48 hours, we've conducted a full forensic audit of the Whitaker estate. Not only is the 6-year-old quitclaim deed legally void, but we've also uncovered evidence that Julian siphoned over $100,000 from the property's maintenance fund for personal investments." Julian's face turned bright red. "That was an emergency allocation. It was grand larceny," David replied smoothly. "Which leaves your family with 2 choices. You can proceed with the sale, in which case 50% of the $2 million purchase price, $1 million, goes directly to my client, Nora. Or we file a formal fraud injunction, freeze all assets, and let the state district attorney review Julian's financial records." The room went dead silent. The trap had finally sprung. Faced with the terrifying prospect of criminal charges and public exposure, my mother and Julian had no room left to maneuver. The golden child's carefully constructed image as a successful businessman collapsed in a matter of minutes. With David holding all the legal leverage, they were forced to sign the court-supervised settlement right there in the conference room. The sale of the ancestral house went through under strict judicial oversight. Because of a court-mandated audit, Julian was legally forced to repay the funds he had siphoned before he could touch a single penny of his remaining portion. After 6 years of treating me like an inconvenient accessory, my family watched helplessly as $1 million, half of the home's total value, was wired directly into my bank account. Word of the legal fallout spread quickly through our extended family. The aunts, uncles, and cousins who had spent the last 6 years judging me, believing the story that I was the cold, ungrateful daughter who abandoned her mother, finally saw the public records. The truth was out in the open. Julian was a fraud, my mother was his accomplice, and I was the one who had been wronged all along. They didn't just lose the house, they lost their hold over everyone who had once enabled them. As I walked out of that law firm for the final time, I severed every remaining legal, financial, and emotional thread connecting me to them, closing that dark chapter of my life forever. Driving back to my coastal home, the weight that had rested on my shoulders for 6 years finally lifted. I didn't feel a surge of malicious triumph. I felt something much deeper, peace. For years, I had believed that going no contact was just about escaping the noise. But this experience taught me that setting boundaries isn't an act of revenge. It's an act of self-respect. Standing up to my mother and Julian didn't ruin our family. Their own greed and deceit did. By refusing to let them manipulate me one last time, I didn't just reclaim the inheritance my grandfather intended for me. I reclaimed my dignity. Today, my life is quiet again. I wake up in my sunlit home near the ocean, free from the crushing weight of hidden debts, toxic expectations, and guilt. The 89 missed calls that once felt like a nightmare turned out to be the final key to my freedom. I turn the page and, for the first time in my life, I get to write the rest of the story on my own terms. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to set strict boundaries or go no contact with toxic people in your life? How did you find your peace? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more. Thank you for watching.